Press hockey coverage with Jim Biringer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Full Press NHL podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, voice of Full Press Hockey, joined today by Anthony Donati. Get him, Prospect on, Draft Pro Hockey. He was at the draft this past year. I know it wasn't, centralized, but still, it's the NHL draft. It's so much fun to interact. Been to a couple myself. Anthony, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's obviously great time to come on. I see that you got some bobbleheads over there, but I was so excited when Connor Bedard got the hat trick yesterday. I got my Connor Bedard captain jersey right here, and I think he's going to be captain, so I needed to get the C on there. And the Blackhawks are actually playing Jonathan Toews next game, so it's going to be future captain versus captain, and so. I did get to go to the draft. That was awesome food. The first day. The second day, they gave us Lay's and pretzels, and I think a lot of people were upset, but I was so happy. Like, I am such a Lay's guy. I was like, this is awesome. So it was great. I got to interview so many of the prospects because it was, everybody was at home. So there was only like 10% of media. So I was just like the only guy talking to Frondell or whatever. It was crazy. So I enjoyed the first draft being decentralized.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been there. It's just so crazy when everybody's there. But you mentioned the Chicago Blackhawks. We got to talk about them because, let's be honest, I tweeted this out before in regards to the Adam Fox, but I think it's all sports, no matter what, whether it's college football, hockey, doesn't matter. We love these narratives, and we play off these narratives, and everybody buys into these narratives. Do I think what the Chicago Blackhawks are doing is sustainable? Probably not. But I think this team, because I saw them opening night in Florida, they have a goaltender, they have the pieces. The Blackhawks are for real. They're coming. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but they're coming.
Yeah, and, I'm the prospect Don, so I have to be prospect-oriented for all 32 teams. But it's so hard when the Blackhawks are the team that I grew up watching, the reason I fell in love with hockey, the 2010s dynasties, and now they're the most exciting team right now at this point in the NHL. They're scoring goals. If they're scoring 3 goals, they're scoring 7 or 8. Like, there's not anything in between. It's either they're getting 1 goal and Spencer Knight's on his head with a 9.35 save percentage, or they're scoring 8 goals. There's not really a middle ground. It's kind of reminiscent of the Chicago Cubs in 2014, a year before they got booted by the Mets in the 2015 playoffs, and then they won in 2016. They brought up a bunch of prospects that didn't know that they were supposed to lose, and they did not know better, and then they ended up going on a huge run. They made an acquisition at the trade deadline. They got a Aroldis Chapman for some other prospects, and a lot of fans were mad because they were like, we're only getting him for 3 months, but at the same time, he won a championship. With the Blackhawks, this is a little different because they're building a dynasty, and they built the foundation. The hardest part of building a dynasty is getting the generational quote-unquote talent, and then supporting cast. Frankie Nazar, Sam Renzel, you can kind of throw Spencer Knight in there as well, because I think he's a top 10 goalie in the league. I think he's like just on the cusp of stardom. So you got those guys, and I believe that this is just the starting point. Like Frondell, Cancerov, Lardis, they're all in there. And then you talk about the 6 other first-round picks that they drafted recently in the last 3-4 years, which is Boisvert, Vanacker, who continues to score hatties. He's taken over the Lardis role in Brantford. And so Mason West threw 4 touchdowns again last week. Who else is doing that? And you got Václav Nestrasil, who's one of my favorite people and like just person in the NHL, just in the system organization. So they're loaded. They can trade any of these one guys. They have 10 picks in the first 2 rounds of the next 3 years. So like, that's crazy. Just to have that many assets. They have the Florida Panthers pick for the Seth Jones trade, which helped both teams. They've been wheeling and dealing, and I do think that this is just the start. I do not think that they're a playoff team. I would be very surprised if they were, but you saw what Dustin Wolf did with the Calgary Flames last year. He pulled them into the playoffs, and I do think that the Blackhawks have a little more excitement around them than Calgary had last year, but Calgary just won games. It was just like they're winning games, and we don't know how to stop them. If you get a hot goalie, you can do a lot of things. Having a hot goalie play for 70 games is just not sustainable in modern day NHL now. It's like 40 or 50. But if you have Spencer Knight and he's like, I'm not leaving the net, and you have Drew Commesso coming up, who's been just a Spencer Knight in the AHL, I mean, that 1-2 punch right there is going to win a lot of games for the Blackhawks. So I continue to say they're going to be closer to the McKenna race than they are the playoff race, but now it's like I need to rethink this. You got a Frankie Nazar who is scoring goals, and it's not even a headline anymore because he just scores them too much. And then Connor Bedard sniping everything and scoring a hat trick and winning me and some Blackhawks people that in my group chat that I told every game it's going to be this year to bet on a Hattie. So it's a really exciting time in Chicago, and I see it as like a New Jersey Devils type of rise when they had Simone Nemec and Jack Hughes, Nico. Like they drafted really well at the top. They didn't really bust any of the picks, especially Luke Hughes. He got a lot of money, more than both of his brothers. So all of those picks at the top of the draft worked out. And I think that the Blackhawks picked a little bit safer picks, which obviously the question is Demidov versus Artie, but you have Caden Lindstrom that got drafted by Columbus. Beckett Seneca's looking good too. So there's a lot of storylines around this team, and I think that's why it's exciting. But it's not going to be a McKenna race this year. Maybe for the Panthers pick, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully, you look at it, right, and you say to yourself, okay, the first couple of years, Connor Bedard, obviously his rookie year, he was just thrust into being the face of that franchise. Fair or unfair, it was like the Bedard, it's him, he's on the national spotlight. Then he takes a little bit, not say take a step back last year, but, there was other hype around some other players. And, again, the Blackhawks weren't a great team. The supporting cast around him wasn't a great team. But as you know Shane Malloy very well, I know Shane Malloy very well, the maturation, the development of a player, the body, the mind, how guys mature, putting on man weight. Connor Bedard this year looks like the Connor Bedard that we saw dominate. And he's doing it right now. Like you talked about the hat trick on Tuesday night. Every one of those goals were pure sniping goals.
Yeah.
He was all over the ice. Again, I know, look, we could say it, Ottawa play back-to-back, doesn't matter. He has a confidence to his game this year I haven't seen in a really, really long time.
It's really exciting when you look at the last few years of the NHL draft and then the upcoming next few years of the NHL draft, because it's just been producing NHL stars. You look at what Connor Bedard did to Macklin Celebrini's hype, he basically nullified it. It was all about Connor Bedard. And then Celebrini was like, I saw a tweet from somebody that they were testing or polling a bunch of GMs or scouts or whatever, and they were like, we'd rather have 3 first-round picks plus Macklin Celebrini pick for Connor Bedard that year, where it was like, we would want 4 first-round picks for Connor Bedard type of thing. The hype around Celebrini was so low, even though what he did in the NCAA was historically good. Like Adam Fantilli the year before, I think, made it like normalized scoring that many points in the NCAA, but that's not normal at all. Like, that's not normal.
No.
You see what Gavin McKenna is doing. It's very hard for him. He's 165 pounds listed, and he's a smaller 6 foot. He's probably 6 foot on the dating apps where it's like 5'11" usually. In my opinion, it's a little hard to score 70 plus points in the NCAA, and that's exactly what Macklin Celebrini did. He went from the USHL, which is a great developmental league, up to the NCAA, and he did it in flying colors. I think that if he was in the CHL, he would have scored 150 plus points, but it's so much harder against 22 to 25-year-olds. And then you have a guy like Matthew Schaefer that went from the OHL playing 17 games, 30 if you count like the preseason and the initial games, summer showcases, whatever it was, but he only played I think a game in 4 minutes for Team Canada before he broke his collarbone, and he was the best player on the ice. So now Matthew Schaefer's hype was so much lower because one, he didn't play a lot of games, and then two, you had Celebrini and Bedard there, and then you had McKenna on the back end. So now you have McKenna and Landon Dupont and Pelosi who are coming out in 2027, and it's just like how much talent is going to be able to come into the NHL. Like it's a new generation. You have Demidov last year or in 2024 as well. Mitch Koff in 2023, Leo Carlson Fantilli in 2023. Zach Benson is one of my favorite players in the NHL. 2022, you had Logan Cooley, Simone Emick, because I'm going to bring him in there because he's very talented, and I think people forgot. I was a big fan of Simone, and it just felt like everybody wrote him off. He wanted to play in the NHL, but just couldn't, establish himself. And then you have a guy like Frankie Nazar and Sam Renzel, who are coming out of the 2022 draft, who are looking like very, very good and have really high, like top potential of top of the line players. So it's really interesting the kind of talent that's coming in. And I think that kind of hurt Bedard's feelings because it's like, oh, it's not about me anymore. It was about him the entire time. And I don't think he likes the spotlight. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it was more disrespect. When he first came in, everyone was just trying to say, welcome to the NHL moment. I'm going to hit you. I remember that first couple of games, he was getting like destroyed by like Ryan Reeves and some other guys that were just like grinders and fourth line players trying to make their name. And, Connor Bedard didn't really have the best start. He had to play with Kurashev, who had 60 points. And then Kurashev got taken off his line and had like 20 and was a fringe NHL player. So Bedard has like 1.2 points per game this season. And I believe Connor McDavid, 11 and 14, is 1.25 or something like. So he is in that realm, but Connor McDavid has Draisaitl. He's got like Hyman. He's got so many of these guys on his power play, wing, whatever it is, that he can produce those numbers. Connor Bedard is still playing with, Ryan Green, who has 5 NHL games, who's not established at all, which he looked great with. Colton Dach, who obviously is Kirby's younger brother, but this guy isn't necessarily the most established player. He's known for his hitting more than anything, and they're playing him on the first line. They had Landon Slaggert on his line like last year, a couple games, and Landon hasn't even really been able to crack that like a real lineup. Lucas Reichel was on the line with him before in the season and training camp, and then played a couple games. But anytime he turned over the puck, he'd get benched in the third quarter or period. But that was a different story. But Connor Bedard hasn't had that help that he's needed. And then Macklin Celebrini, you have an incredible top six on paper. Like I tweeted, imagine the Sharks get Gavin McKenna. So you have Michael Misa, Will Smith, William Eklund, who I'm a huge fan of, Quentin Musty, or Igor Chernyshov, who I think is going to play with Misa on the second line. But you have like 5 of the top 6 that are just elite potential players. And then you get McKenna. I have no idea. Like I was told that they could trade Will Smith if that's the case. Like you're not trading Will Smith.
No, you're not trading him. No, absolutely not.
So like maybe you trade, a bunch of packages with your first round picks or whatever to get a right-handed defenseman, or like, whatever happens if you get McKenna. But that's just what I'm saying. Like Macklin Celebrini is going to be fed so many incredible plays. And you saw what he did with Will Smith yesterday. That incredible pass, that was all Macklin Celebrini. Anyone could have scored that. Like Will Smith obviously put it in the back of the net, but that he was wide open for 5 seconds. I don't know how Macklin Celebrini saw that, but you have two extremely skilled players that see the game at such a high level, but they just don't have the teammates around them to see the game at a high level. So you're kind of in a box there where you get Bedard and Celebrini on a line together or whatever it is, even if it's in Canada in the next, 10 years, they're going to absolutely cook because they see the game the same way. You need to bring somebody over if it's a trade or the draft or whatever it is, because all these stars continue to get re-signed, like Kaprizov, who Blackhawks fans thought. You need somebody that sees the game at a high level to complement Bedard, because you see what he could do on his own. Now he's realized he has to do it on his own and is showcasing that incredible shot that he should have been showcasing.
Yeah, he should have been.
So that's just kind of like what I think. Connor Bedard is going to explode with his point production when you add people around him that are highly skilled too.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable what we're seeing. And you mentioned it before, like McKenna in college, and you were around it and you heard the hype, and maybe not so much the hype, but maybe again, I don't know why everybody just knocked James Higgins off this
Yeah.
number one pedestal, because he put up a point per game in college hockey against 22-year-olds. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I get what Schaefer did, and I understand everybody's play, but the Boston Bruins have a hell of a prospect in that kid. And I just looked up his stats. He's got 6 points in 5 games right now. I know the season's still early, but again, like you said, playing against 22-year-olds and playing against 20 and 18-year-olds is completely different. What Higgins did as an 18-year-old against 22-year-olds, that says something.
100%. And when I look at scouting for hockey and football and basketball, I always bring it to same elements of things. When Will Smith was playing with Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard, he was the commander. He was the conductor of this ship. Extremely talented. And then you have James Higgins replacing him there. So you had to put him in a role where these guys are already their most established prospects in both of these pools, in the Rangers and the Capitals. And you needed to basically play 3-and-D as a basketball player. You're going to the corner and just shooting threes when allowed. Like, this is a Russell Westbrook type of player where he needs the puck and the ball on his stick in his hands every single time so that he can be able to cook. He's a quarterback. Will Smith was that guy, and they had such an incredible chemistry. You had to bring over, a kid that's 17 that just turned 18 into the into the NCAA, playing against 22 to 25-year-olds, and they are going to eliminate his ability to get to the center of the ice, and that's exactly what they did. So I really feel that it was a disservice for James Higgins. I understand why he went there, because you had two elite players on his line and they think the game highly, but when you are looking at that line, he was the weakest link. So of course defenses are going to push and play him and pressure him more, push him to his weaknesses, where was getting into the center of the ice, using his body. He wasn't necessarily taking a hit to make a play like Victor Eklund in the SHL. He didn't have that in him yet. And, a year into the NCAA, it's obviously going to get easier, but he lost two of those players. So in your mind, you think it's going to get harder, but actually it's going to get easier. Now he's able to be the guy. He's going to be able to produce like he needs to, because he is that guy that's going to have the puck on his stick. And that team is loaded too. The NCAA has gotten some incredible talent, and, it's getting a lot harder. So the points are not going to be there as much. When you look at a guy's stats, you're going to be like, oh, he didn't perform as well. But, Artem Levshunov got 35 points in 38 games for Michigan State, his first and only season in the NCAA. And everyone was like, this guy's a god. But it's like, how do those points come? And is he involved? He throws the puck to the net all the time. And that's great. He was shooting 10 shots a game with the Rockford Ice Hogs in the AHL. He was just throwing the puck to the net. He wanted to get involved offensively, but that doesn't translate as much. Kayshawn Aitchison had 26 goals in the OHL last year, and that's just not his game. It's not going to translate as much. So it's interesting when a guy like James Higgins goes to the NCAA and has a lot of weaknesses that are shown, but still is a point producing player and a point per game player in the NCAA. So I was very surprised him and Porter Martone both fell out of that top 4. I had them solidified in my top 4. I know Caleb Desnoyers was a fan favorite of a lot of GMs. And he was one of the only true centers in that class at the top that you can really slide in, other than Misa and Frondell. Because, Frondell, I'm not sure if he's a true center, but a lot of what NHL scouts and people were saying was he can man a 2C line. He's just not going to be the driver. So if you get a guy like Bedard there, playing as his 1C or his center, and then you have him take face-offs in the playoffs, I think that's the best case scenario. But Caleb Desnoyers was a Selke candidate in people's eyes of what could a prospect do. So you needed to take him. I get that. But I think James Higgins has an offensive skill set that outweighs what Caleb's can, as well as Anton Frondell, even though Anton Frondell has that shot. But the Blackhawks couldn't have taken James Higgins. You can't have 3 under 5'11" centers. So I understand why they didn't do it, but I don't understand why the Predators didn't take Higgins, because I know Brady Martin's great, very great playoff player, but you needed more centers that can do the things that James Hagens does. So I was a little surprised to see that. But other than that, like it was tough to see James Hagens fall that much.
No, but I'm just glad he's in a good. Like maybe the Boston Bruins will finally get like a true prospect that can like do everything because since 2015 they really haven't hit a lot on their first round picks. Because there's not many in the league right now from them, and they're not developing the right way in their system either. But again, that's drafting and developing, and we see that around the league. Like you said, San Jose's got a good prospect pool. Chicago obviously has a great prospect pool, and you bring in Montreal. We talked about it. Demidov's coming, is here, and he's playing well. The way they've got Caufield situated, the way they've got Suzuki in there, they've really Jeff Gordon and Ken Hughes really did a good job scouting, drafting, and bringing in the right pieces for this team. And saying, you know what, we got to get the kids here. Yeah, there's going to be growing pains. We see it with Chicago, San Jose, and they're rolling right now.
Yeah, and I think to your point about Boston, they took Dean Letourneau, really high upside, but if he, doesn't is not able to translate to any sort of level, he could flame out very, very quickly. I think that he's kind of putting it on this season, but it's still not first round pick talent at this point. I think that they just were doing swing and misses, but you have a team like the Sharks and the Blackhawks that have a lot of lottery tickets. So, you can, pick more risky plays like a Mason West or, even I'm really high on Estersil, but he's 6'6" player, that only had, wasn't a point per game player in the USHL until his last 30 games. So they took a lot of risk there. I think the Bruins, that was the first pick that they had for James Hagens, that it was, this is a high risk, high reward, but he also was a floor to be a center in the NHL. And if not, he can be a winger that's highly skilled and will play well with space. So I feel like that was kind of a no-brainer pick for them. They needed that. They lost a lot of centers recently. So I feel like that was a must, but they just didn't have the ability to. And to your point, like Cole Caufield, he was a player that a lot of people online were saying that this guy's a top 7, top 5 prospect. But it was just the height. But you saw the skill, you saw his highlight reel every single time he made an incredible play. You were like, that might not translate, but if it does, like, you need that guy. Every prospect, I know we were talking about Shane Malloy. He was saying, there's only like 20% of players or whatever it is are going to play over 200% or 200 games in the NHL if you're drafted. That's just such a short amount of players that I think you just need to take highest upside. Because I mean, that means like 80%. There's an 80% bust rate and in the draft, so you just need to take highest upside, and that's kind of how I do it in my rankings and my mock drafts. Where it's like if a guy has a really high upside but a lower floor, that guy's going to drop a couple spots, but it doesn't really matter because the floors are so rangy that it doesn't really do much because you have a guy like Vio Bjork this season who is 5'10" listed. He could be 5'8". We have no idea. We're getting different opinions or different wording everywhere. But the guy's incredibly skilled. He had 72 points and 74 points in 42 games in the J20 last year, which is just absolutely nuts. I know that Anton only had 7 points in 10 games. So just that season. So you just look at that and you're like, wow. But he could fall out of the top 20, just like Cam Schmidt did to 93 to the Stars last season, even though some people had him, Craig Button had him 8 at one point. Some people had him in the top 15. So it's like some of these guys get taken by a team that only doesn't really have a lot of picks because the Stars, that was, I think, their first pick in the draft. So there's teams that are capitalizing on these players falling. But sometimes I feel that teams overthink or they just are trying to draft for need. When these guys are 17, 18, it's going to take them 4, 5, 6 years to come to the NHL. You cannot draft for need. Like, that's never a thing you do. You draft people for assets. They're assets. You could go out and get your need if you need it. So I feel like with Hagens, with what the Bruins did, it was just based on what they needed in the like future. I think that they took Dean because they didn't really have a high pick, and they were like, if he hits, he's going to be an incredible player. And I respected the play there. But now the Bruins are in a different situation where they're rebuilding, they're retooling, they're going to be drafting there for a while. So Haggins was the perfect play to get that center, just to start the rebuild, kind of.
Yeah, and look, we talk about all these young guys, and you mentioned Caufield. We talk about Celebrini. We've talked about Bedard. We know we have that thing coming up in February called the Olympics. We know
Yeah.
Celebrini's getting a ton of hype for what he's doing right now, and obviously what he did at the World Championship. And I was actually looking this up because everybody said, oh, Bedard didn't go in 2025. But, they had the same amount of points. Bedard had one more goal. Celebrini was 4-4. Bedard was 5-3 at the World Championships in the same amount of games. And I'm thinking to myself, I know Canada has a specific way of putting a team together, and I might be we're looking at it right now, and I say to myself, yeah, I could see Celebrini over Bedard, but I also could see Bedard on the roster too and being there because what he brings to the table. And I flip it to Team USA. Frank Nazar, Cole Caufield, guys are winners. Guys have performed on the international stage. Team USA lost by 1 goal at the Four Nations in overtime. Kyle Connor wasn't in the lineup. Austin Matthews was hurt. Cole Caufield just set the record for the Montreal Canadiens history of most overtime goals. I think I'm taking a guy like that.
Yeah, and I think to your point with Bedard and Celebrini is more of the Olympics type of player where it's two-way. You're going to be able to use his grit and fourth line mentality, even though he's a star on the third or fourth line. I think with Bedard that if he's on the fourth line playing 5 or 7 minutes a night, it's going to embarrass him and the entire world. It's going to be a spectacle where you're like, oh, Bedard isn't even playing, blah, blah, blah. He's terrible. And could it hurt his confidence for a little while? It might. But at the same time, when he comes back to the NHL, he's going to have just so much bulletin board material that he's going to go off. And I feel like that's not something that we're thinking about in terms of who can make it to the Olympics, because on some teams, they just don't have the role that these guys need. It's the same thing as a prospect. Sometimes you look at a guy that can play in the top 6, but if he doesn't, then he might flame out because that's not his role. Like even Lucas Reichel playing on the fourth, third line, he was a top 6 player that had a lot of skill. Couldn't really make it because he's not playing on the top 6, and every time he had the chance, they would just move him around. I think it's the same thing. And Frank Nazar for USA and Spencer Knight, and I think both of those players have a really good shot at making it because one, I think Spencer Knight is the second best US born goalie right now in the NHL. I think Hellebuck has that locked up, but I think Spencer Knight can win you gold at the Olympics. He just can get hot. He's just a guy that has that playoff experience too. I think in 2 games, because Bobrovsky was incredible. He was 2-0 with a 9.37 save percentage. It was something absolutely nuts. Frankie Nazar has the same thing as Celebrini, where he plays with that fourth line mentality, back checking. He could use his speed, so he could be on a bottom 6 role, in my opinion, for the Olympics. With Bedard, it's either you're going to play him on the third or fourth line, which it could be a checking role. And I'm just a little afraid of that. I hope that they can give him some power play time. But if you look at that Canada roster, it's just absolutely loaded at the top. So it's like, where are you going to play him? That third line, if you put him with an incredible center and you give him some help, even if it's Celebrini, great center, and then Bedard, I think that would be great because they're going to play him at forward. He's not making it as a center or a winger.
Yeah,
so,
no.
I think it would just be best case scenario if they played him on the third line because he's not a fourth line player. That's just kind of going to hurt him.
No, I agree with you on that. As we were saying, we're talking about the Olympics, Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini and his role. And I agree with you. The confidence of a player is so important these days when it comes to how they're doing. I saw with Jack Hughes in his first couple of years with the New Jersey Devils. Like his confidence, even though he's putting up points, his confidence wasn't there, especially in his first season. Getting bounced around as a 18-year-old in a league. And I always thought he should have gone to the World Juniors to get his confidence back up. And we're seeing what the player he is today. I mean, obviously when he's healthy, that team goes through New Jersey. They're playing at such a high level. And like you said, Simone Nemec is coming into his own now in this season. He had his first 3-point night the other night. He's playing well. Great pick by New Jersey. Again, everybody can talk about, you go back, play revisionist history with these drafts, including, look what Logan Cooley's doing over in Utah. He signed that new deal, 8 times $10 million. All well and good. Frankie Nazar got that new contract as well with the Chicago Blackhawks. But again, when it comes down to what the need is at these games or at the Olympics or any international tournament, I look at it and I say to myself, if a player can score goals, and I know defense is important, I agree with you 100%. Roles, NHL teams and coaches overthink this. If you have a prospect in the AHL, say, and he was a top 6 forward, you don't bring him up to play on the third line. He has to play in the role he was meant to play for. If he's not ready, then don't bring him up.
I completely agree. And I think that the hard part with either the Olympics or bringing people up to the NHL, it's the AHL rule that some teams, like the WHL and some of these other teams in the CHL, they can't bring their guys directly over to the AHL. And I think that's changing next year. And it's the same thing as the Olympics. Like, it's the largest event that these guys can get into. It's an honor. You can't just get picked for these teams over some other guys just because you have the potential. And I feel like that's something that we want to see as an exciting hockey, fans. We want the guys that are the most skilled, but you need to fit the role that they have. And I feel like this was a Kevin Korchinski thing. He went to the NHL because he didn't want to just cook in the WHL. It really hurt his confidence. He was like a minus 48, and then he had to go to the AHL after he was eligible, and it just like he's looking great now because he built that confidence up, but it destroyed him to go to the NHL and just get picked on. I feel like that could be something in the Olympics too, because if you're the weakest link on your Olympics team, you are fighting for gold or silver or just a medal. They're going to pick on you. That could ruin your confidence completely just for a little while, but you might not get picked again. I think with Bedard and Celebrini, you got 2 guys that are the future of Canada. Same with Spencer Knight with USA and Frank Nazar. They're younger players and they're on the fringe of deserving it. So you want them to gain that experience, but you want them to gain the experience in a positive way. Last time Connor Bedard played an international tournament for Team Canada, they kind of slashed his minutes. They ruined him a little. He was a healthy scratch, 13th forward, whatever it was, right after he was drafted into the NHL, and it really kind of hurt his confidence. And it was just like, we know you're going to be great, but you need to show us. And Hockey Canada is a little different. Team USA is a little different because I feel like on Team USA, Connor Bedard could be one of the top players, and they would give him all the supporting role he needed. With Canada, you just have so many incredible offensive weapons there, so it's just a little different. Same with like Spencer Knight. Spencer Knight was eligible for Canada. I think he'd be the starting goaltender. I'm not sure if it would be Jordan Binnington or who it would be, but I feel like, in my opinion, Spencer Knight might be the future of Canada's goaltending if he was from Canada. It's so much harder with USA because you have Connor Hellebuck, who's just an absolute madman. Joey Daccord is great, and I think he's only gaining more confidence. So, and I just feel like you need to throw in Spencer Knight there, but it's like, what role is he going to have? I think you need to have him as your second goaltender, but if he's your third, just riding the bench for experience, I also get that too. But you just need to gain confidence with the younger guys because these are your future. So if it's not this year, it's going to be the next Olympics, but this is a big Olympics because they haven't had it in years. So the eyes are going to be everywhere. It's going to be international. I think you need to give Bedard and Celebrini that type of recognition and that type of experience because they will be the futures of the team. And if they're playing in a bad role, that's not going to be their role in after 4 years. And the next one, it's like Team USA for soccer. They did this with some of their young guys, and then 4 years later, some of the young guys didn't pan out. It's just, Bedard and Celebrini will pan out. So you need to give them that experience and that opportunity.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you on that. And we go around the league, and there's a team that I want to ask you about, because again, narratives, right? We all come into this season saying, "Oh, Pittsburgh's going to be bad. Pittsburgh's going to be bad. Could be drafted for Gavin McKenna." I think we have to give kudos to Kyle Dubas and the draft picks that he's had at Kindle. I mean, I didn't expect him to do what he's doing right now with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Can you enlighten the audience about him, please?
Yeah, I sat next to Kyle Dubas at the scouting combine for a little bit, and I had an interview with Ben Kindle. So I met Kindle in the lobby. He walked up, and then we had an interview at the table. And Kyle Dubas left, but I didn't even realize that there was an opportunity for Kindle to be drafted there. He is a very explosive offensive player that can use his talent, but his skating is not his greatest strength. I think that it would be named as one of his average talents or scaling from weakness, but it's not a weakness in my opinion. I've seen scouting reports that said it was. It's not really good straight line skater, but it's just like, is he able to translate that into the NHL? Because he was one of the most clutch players in the entire draft last year. No one other than Cole Regini helped his case more than Kindle in the last 2 months of the season. Because I think he had 7 game winners for the Calgary Hitmen last year at the end of the year. And every time he needed a game-winning goal, the guy was scoring it. He lives for those moments. Really do like Ben Kindle. I'm really high on him, and I think it was a good draft pick. I was a little surprised where he got picked because they gave up a lot of value on the board to pick him. But if it's the right pick, then it's going to hit immensely because the only thing was it going to be translatable? And he already scored a goal. You know, now it's getting to the point where a lot of the younger guys are able to translate some of the skills that they had, and I feel like him on a power play, give him space, he's going to be able to score some goals. So really good player, really good playmaker. One of my favorites to watch. I'm happy for him because I got to talk to him over the course of the season for a while last year, and it's just nice to see guys like that. But he's a good player.
Yeah, no, I've been impressed because I've had some people that I know in Pittsburgh text me, and they're like, "Oh, how about those Penguins?" I'm like, "Well, I guess Sidney Crosby's not going anywhere anytime soon. He wants to play." But you look at, we've talked about it because the good teams know how to draft, develop, find players. Because Pittsburgh and Detroit and teams like that, you find players like Jake Getzels is one of the best examples of this. They draft them, he can come up, make impact. We're kind of seeing that again. Florida is going through the issues. No Barkov, Lindell. Anton Lindell is going to have a monster season. People need to realize this because the kid's offensively gifted. But they're looking for D around the league. But again, their prospect pool where they draft, they may have to start like Tampa too. They were so good with guys coming up through their system that could fit into their roles. Is that something you're watching with Florida in regards to their prospects and their guys in the A who can come up and fill some roles with guys out injured?
Yeah, I think that it's important for these teams to fill out organizational depth, especially the teams that are building towards being a contender in a dynasty. With the Panthers, they've already had sustained success. They've won back to back, and then you have 3 straight Stanley Cup appearances. And I feel that their organizational depth in the prospect pool just isn't really there yet. They need to replenish, but they don't have a lot of first round picks. Their next first round pick, I believe, is 2028. So it's very hard for them to actually get that depth and what you kind of need. Let's say you need to get a guy with Barkov on LTIR, then Tkachuk is hurt, so you need a guy on the trade deadline. They're probably going to trade that 2028 first round pick then before the draft happens. So it's very hard. I feel like they're a team that has so many incredible players that they can just trade one and they can recoup those assets. But what they did at during free agency in the offseason was incredible. They signed Marchand, Ekblad, and I'm not even. There was one more, but they signed him.
Bennett.
Oh yeah, Bennett.
Yep.
That was actually the big fish too, and they signed him for such a low deal on all of them that it's like they can build I think that Brad Marchand took more terms so that he gets that guaranteed money more than the AAV because 6 years is just absolutely nuts for him. But he could probably play 6 years if he wanted to, but that's more of a 3-year deal, where he's just taking the money. But I feel that they did such a good job at replenishing in the offseason that you don't really need the organizational depth that much. They traded for Seth Jones. They So now they have another right-handed defenseman that can play 20, 25 minutes a night. Aaron Ekblad is great. I am a very big fan of him. I was surprised that he stayed there for the money he got, but you know, they needed to lock him up too. So they're a fun team to watch during every trade deadline now because they're a contender for the next 3 to 5 years if they keep this up. I don't think they're going to really bring up a lot of prospects. It's going to be some guys that they took time with and didn't need to get, and they flourished.
And I mentioned Tampa too because they for years were a team. You had Kucherov come up, Andre Palat, Tyler Johnson. You had the triplets come up. Obviously Sergachev, they brought him in, then they moved him out. They've made some different moves along the way, and their pool and their depth in their organization needs to get a little better, in my opinion, so they can keep their sustained success. And one of those guys is now at Edmonton. The Isaac Howard situation. Again, whatever happened there, money, contract, whatever. He's now in Edmonton with Matt Savoy, and that could work out for Edmonton. But again, Tampa's another team that I circle and say, hey, we got to get some organizational depth here.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they had like 3 draft picks last year, and it's just not enough to get organizational depth. What they have been doing is signing. I think that they signed Dominic James from the Blackhawks, who was high draft pick for the Hawks. Maybe 3rd round, maybe 4th, but he was somebody that the Blackhawks really liked. Really speedy guy, also is gritty. I think that's kind of what they're going to be doing. I know they had to trade Ike Howard, and they did get a good return off of that. But at the same time, it's hard when you're a team that has that much sustained success. It's what happened with the Blackhawks. It's what happened to those Penguins. You just don't have enough assets to be able to contend and also build out your organizational depth. So they're another team. They got guys like Brandon Hagel was such a great trade for them when they gave up 2 first-round picks and 2 solid prospects because the prospects didn't really become much. Boris Kachuk or Boris, I forgot his one, but Boris, and then you have Taylor Radish. Both of those guys didn't really turn into much. And then you had the 2 first-round picks that were Oliver Moore, and one of them was Boisvert in a trade. But so the Blackhawks got great assets, but I think the Blackhawks would probably rather have Brandon Hagel, who's top 10 right winger right now. So I feel like they are a team that also took a chance on Janner, Tanner Jeannot, and that was a bad trade because they traded basically a whole draft class and Cal Foot. And it's just like it's hard when you made those massive trades and gave up so many assets and it didn't really work out. So they're a team that they could trade some players too for younger players, but they're going for it. They're going to continue to go for it. They'll figure out their organizational depth when they're retooling, but at this point, it's just foot on the gas.
Yeah, no. I mean, you looked at a lot of teams. Like we could say, Nashville. Like I always say, me and Russ Cohen, we always have this running inside joke. Nashville, what are we doing? Like we trade away all these future guys that can help you right now. Oh, by the way, you need some facilitators for Steven Stamkos, but you don't have them. Nashville again. Yeah. Dante Fabro is playing really well in Columbus right now. Could use him. Again, and now Detroit. For years, Detroit would say, no, we got to let these guys cook. Now we're seeing, hey, Steve Yzerman's like, maybe got to bring the guys up, maybe bring the young kids up, because I did not see Axel Sandy Pellikka making this team to start the year.
Yeah, he's so talented. One of my favorite players in that draft class. He's just so offensively skilled. A guy that you want to watch. I love what he does. They have guys like Nate Danielson. Michael Branson Nygaard's a hard one because it's like Shane Malloy hates this, but it's a guy that's in the middle six. And he hates that word, like middle six, because it's like you're either a fourth forward on your team or an eighth. Like, what even is that? That's just lazy. But at the same time, they've been drafting a lot of middle six players that can alternate a little bit, but you don't have that star on the second line. I know that Nate Danielson was a player that I had a little bit of higher hopes after he got drafted, and then he kind of settled in. One of Bedard's best friends. I think that he's a really good player. They've drafted the similar players a lot. I think Carter Berry was a good one because they brought in a guy that his player comp for himself. I asked, and he said it actually was Brandon Hagel. So it's funny that we went from him to this, but you got a guy that is different than some of the guys that they got, but he's probably a second line player. So again, that's in the middle six tab. So they need that star. I think that they've done well with getting Patrick Kane, Alex DeBrincat to fill those roles of scoring. I'm a huge Dylan Larkin guy. I love watching him skate. He's one of my favorite skaters to watch. And Axel Sandin, like, he's just so skilled, so talented. I did think he was going to play a lot of games this year in the NHL, but I didn't necessarily know when he was going to get them. Was he going to get like 30 at the end of the year? I don't know if you can send him down or what. Like, you just need to let him cook, in my honest opinion, gain that confidence. He is good defensively, so he's going to be able to hold his own. Whereas like a Kevin Korchinski was too young. I think he is right in the realm. You have guys like Moritz Seider who were taken and the pick was booed. And it was just such a funny scene. It was like the Knicks with Porzinski. They were like, who is this guy? And you look at it and you're like, man, that guy hit. So is there going to be something similar with a Carter Bear? I think Carter Bear, if you ask him, he would have said he was going in the fourth round at like in May. He had no idea where he was ranked in the draft boards. This guy just loves playing hockey, did not care where he was getting drafted. Obviously, he was always a first round pick, but he just did not look or know any of it. So he could be the guy there in the next few years just because he has that mentality. He had no idea he was going to be drafted 2 years out. He is just happy to be in that position. He's a grinder. He's blue collar as they come. He's going to go into the dirty areas. He had the lacerated Achilles, but was back skating after like 6 weeks. So the guy is just an alien. So excited to see how young that team is getting, but they also filled in the roles with these stars that had the offensive potential on the short like deals. They even had Tarasenko, and they made sure that they filled out the roles that they needed with guys that are there. So I like what they did. I think that the Blackhawks needed to do that more, bring in superstars that are at the tail end of your career. I know that they tried with guys like Corey Perry, and now it's working with Edmonton, but they needed to get rid of him, as well as guys like Nick Foligno, who's become captain, but they needed to do more with the more skilled guys. Like Tarasenko, I thought would have been fantastic with Bedard. I know they tried to get Taylor Hall from you guys, and what he did with his MVP season was awesome to watch, but they tried. Sometimes it just doesn't work. And when you got a guy like Patrick Kane and DeBrincat there, that's just so fun to watch. So I really do like the Red Wings. They're like my second favorite team in the NHL.
How does that work? Chicago and Detroit. I don't know about that old
Well,
rivalry.
it's just that it's Patrick Kane and DeBrincat. I like to see them succeed. If I'm watching a game on ESPN Plus and they're on and you see Patrick Kane on the power play, I'm just like locked in. I'm more of a Kane fan. Like I don't care about the Red Wings' success in terms of will they win the Stanley Cup. I think it would be cool to see like Kane or Jonathan Tays pick the cup up again. But other than that, it's more Kane and Tays. Like they fueled my love for the game, and it's something that I will always just cherish seeing them. And I think that Patrick Kane still has like 5, 6 good years left. Still wish he was on the Blackhawks. He would be perfect with Kane and Bedard. Like that would be Panarin and Bedard, and or Panarin and Kane. But my two favorite players in the league are like Bedard and then co-opted Panarin and Kane because I just like the way they play. It's just very skilled players that understand what they're doing. So it's it's because of that.
All right, hypothetical for you. I got to throw this one out there for you. Just hypothetical for fun, because we got to be fun here. We like to have fun on the show. With Panarin being UFA, could you see him returning to Chicago and maybe being that guy that Bedard needs?
It's an interesting one because I feel like Panarin's either very mad at the Blackhawks for trading him and will use it as I'm never coming back. But you saw Teuvo come back after they traded him, and I think Panarin would be perfect with Bedard. But that's a tough one. I think Panarin was more likely to team up with Kane than he is the Blackhawks. That's how I will say it.
Wow. Okay. So Detroit. Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, I just want to.
Well, even if Kane leaves, wherever he goes.
Yeah. No, I mean, because it's just because, like you said, he needs that guy, that skilled guy. Because we know Bedard's like, hey, you know what? I can do it. I can do that Jordan thing. I can put the team on my back. But as long as we can have a couple of guys around me, I think we can win here. Similar to what we're seeing in San Jose. As long as San Jose can stop the puck and play some D. One more before we round this thing out. Got to ask you about, stay with the Blackhawks for a minute. We see Martin St. Louis, what he's done in Montreal. At the time, everybody's like, head scratcher, he hasn't had any coaching experience, but he was the right guy for that group. I feel, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Jeff Blashill coming back, second time around, he's talked about how he's enjoying it. I feel like he's the perfect coach for this group of players.
Perfect is such a hard word when you're talking about coaching because I'm not going to lie, I was all in on David Carl if he was making it his way to the NHL. The pedigree, what he did with Denver, just the aura he had, and I feel like the Blackhawks needed that. With Blashill, it's Bedard, Nazar, Spencer Knight. You don't really hear much about Blashill as the guy. I think with some teams, you have the coach as the pedestal a little bit. Or like with the Red Wings, it's Stevie Y. I know that's not the coach, but that's Stevie Y. With some other teams, like Lightning, you have Kucherov, Vasilevsky, all those guys, but you also have Cooper. And I feel like the story of these guys comes with. Like the John Cooper story is one of my favorites of all time of how he got into coaching. So you have that with him. It comes along with it. I feel like with Jeff Blashill, it's about the team. He's not a guy that cares about the spotlight. I don't think he should as an NHL coach, but he is all about team oriented, building up his players in any way. And I love it because he helped develop a lot of the guys from the Red Wings. And, he saw and took the opportunity with the Lightning and all of that to rethink everything that he had done with his Red Wings tenure. And I just really liked that because he had to find himself, find how he got there. The ego of being a coach in the NHL was gone. He got absolutely beat up, but he was there for 6 years with the NHL average coach is like 2.3 years. And it was on a team that only made the playoffs once because they were, that's his pedigree is actually pretty good. In terms of what he did, he was there for a reason for 6 years. That's almost 3 coaching cycles that he survived, or 2 at least. So he was doing something right. The players loved him. I know that we had a couple of JSNs where it's like JSN was talking about Shane Waldron, and he was like, that guy sucks on a live. And he's like, wait, are we live? You had a couple of that from guys that were like, he changed the system. But he probably internalized that too and was like, yeah, I screwed up, So I really like that this is his third, like his second go around from a head coaching cycle, but his like third where he can help mold the team. And then you have guys like Sorensen who helped activate the defensemen with his system in Rockford. And I really thought that helped Sam Rinzel, Kevin Korchinski, well, especially Kevin. Let's not go to Sam Rinzel because he didn't really play for Rockford, but he was there with the system last year and it helped activate him. But you kept, so Korchinski, I think Wyatt Kaiser, EDM, Ethan Delmasher, who's one of the best breakout passers out of any of the back end for Chicago and their organization. I think it helped guys like Artem Levshinov because he was going to throw the puck to the net, so it allowed him to activate more. Obviously, there was some low highlights like of him because he was too far in the zone, and they were like, Artie, what are you doing? But that's the Artie experience. And you have Michael Pekka, who played for a very long time in the NHL, who has that pedigree. You have Mike Vellucci, who is a guy that has that experience. So they built a leadership team. It's like investing in stocks or companies or businesses, you have to look at the leadership team and what are they providing for their team? Because the leadership is so important. So you have a guy that is going to help develop the young players in Blashill, and he's so young that he can help develop together. And Kyle Davidson is one of the youngest GMs still in the NHL, and they have the same vision. So I think it's perfect to go back to your word in the sense of this is a guy that sees the vision, but it's not the name that the Blackhawks needed in a Craig Counsell with the Cubs way, where it was the news cycle for months, where it was the Cubs got Craig Counsell, players are going to come play for him. Blashill needs to show that he can take this team to the playoffs and win consistently in the playoffs, and then players will come. I think that you see right wingers or a left winger be like, I'm going to get paid from Chicago and play with Bedard. That's going to happen next year or the year after. Because I believe that there are players out there that see what Bedard is doing and see what Celebrini are doing and it's like, I want that. Well, the thing with the Sharks is you have an opportunity where you sign long term with the Sharks and they take you off of Celebrini's line because you have Will Smith, Michael Misa, insert superstar Victor Eklund or whatever it is. So the Blackhawks, they don't have anyone. Like you have Nazar, who they want as their 2C, and then you got nothing right now. They like they're playing them with Ryan Donato, and Ryan Donato just had more goals or tied goals with Matthews last year. So there's a real opportunity for Blashill to be the guy that brings another Stanley Cup to the Blackhawks, but it's got to be because it's the sustained success of what the organization did, building the prospect. So I would say it's like an 8.5 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's like an 8.5 higher for the Blackhawks because he changed the system around the Stars. You get a guy with Knight who is the perfect goalie to help activate your defenseman because if there's a breakaway, there's a 50-50 shot he's going to save it. And I think that's awesome. Like last year, if you were playing a couple of the other Blackhawks goalies, it would have been a goal. It would have been 6-1. The Blackhawks would have been out of it. Now it's like the Blackhawks are up 6-1. So it's a different era. Blashill's the guy, and I think that he can bring a Stanley Cup to the Blackhawks.
That's some great information, Anthony. I appreciate you answering that one. I know I threw that one at the fly on you, threw some of these other things on the fly as well. But you know what? That's what I do here. Sometimes my brain just goes everywhere, especially when we're hitting hot conversations, especially around the Blackhawks. And you said it, confidence is key no matter what you're doing. And I think this young Blackhawks team has confidence in their goalie, knowing he's going to stop the puck. Bam. They're going to turn it the other way now. And that's what I'm seeing.
And I'll ask you this. Celebrini or Bedard, in your opinion? Who would you rather have?
It's a great question. I don't want to fall into recency bias because I love what I'm seeing from Celebrini, and they're both, to me, both franchise players. You can make the argument one's a generational talent if you want to. I don't want to say I hate the word, but I think we use it too much when it comes to generational talent. I would take Connor Bedard, to be honest. I just think with what he's doing, where he's at, again, no knock on Celebrini. I think they're both good players, but I like Connor Bedard. I don't know. Yeah. What do you think?
I would pick Connor Bedard and then Celebrini. I think they're in the same tier of player, but I think people are forgetting what Connor Bedard did and what he's about to do. This is baby Bedard. I think we're seeing like more closer to the finished product of a Celebrini. We are like Celebrini's a 90, 95, 100 point player. I'm not saying that, but you're already seeing that. You're seeing what he can do. I think Bedard could get to that level of this guy has a generational shot. He knows how to use it. He's going to use it. Once you get a player next to him that's actually a playmaker, he's going to go on some games where he gets 7-8 points. Like he had 4, and it didn't even look like he was trying at one point to get points. So it was just like he scored 3 incredible snipes, and he picked his pocket. I feel that he can gain a lot more assists. He could get a lot more of these plays that the hockey gods are like, yeah, we'll give you this goal here. a lot of it is Bedard is just sniping. You're gonna get Nick Lardis coming in, Anton Frendel, who have elite shots too. Oliver Moore's speed is ridiculous. You're getting a lot of guys that it's built on speed. This is going to be one of the fastest paced teams in the NHL. Bedard's going to get a lot more breakaways. He barely gets breakaways. He barely gets 2-on-1s. If you've been watching a lot of the Blackhawks games, he's not getting easy goals whatsoever. So I'm I'm thinking that Bedard is going to be a top 5 player in the NHL, and I think Celebrini is going to be a top 10 player in the NHL. Like, I think that it's just so close.
Wow. Unbelievable stuff today, Anthony. Thank you so much. Joining Full Press NHL podcast, talk some prospects, go around the league. Where can everybody get you?
At the Prospect Don on X, YouTube, TikTok. I appreciate everybody for the support to 15,000 followers. That was awesome. We hit that like 2 days ago. And Draft Prospects Hockey is my company. We're a scouting service. We are working with the USHL, working with guys like Shane Malloy, Ross Cohen, some guys that you mentioned. We have some incredible YouTubers and content creators to bring you as much coverage of the 2026 and beyond draft classes. This is, we're 3 weeks in of the new management, which I acquired the company, but this has been a company since before 2020. I think 2018 or 2019 they really started getting going. So we are well established, and it's just cool to kind of have my handprints in with the direction that we're going. I've done some coding stuff from a YouTube video, and I created a mock draft simulator, the Pro. It's really awesome. I'm surprised that it looks good. I have creator rankings on there. So we teamed up with like Stephen Ellis, Nathan Grev, who's on YouTube, NHL Foley, who's Gabe Foley from Rex Scouting, NHL Draft Pros, who's an incredible YouTube channel, Blue Chip Prospect, who's our director of scouting and has a huge YouTube channel as well for prospects. So we're going to be bringing in all of those creator rankings. So you can check it out at draftprospectshockey.com. I'm super excited about it. I couldn't have dreamed the website to look as good as it did already, just in the last couple of weeks. So check it out. But yeah, thanks, Jim. You guys need to start really supporting just everything you're doing because you're awesome. I see you on so many things, those clips. You are everywhere. Every time something happens, I see a 3-minute video of you talking about it. I'm like, this guy works so hard. So I love what you're doing. And yeah, it's great to come on for my first time. This is great.
Well, Anthony, it's not first time, but it's not going to be the last time because definitely going to have you on again. Love the conversation. I appreciate the kind words about the hard work. You work just as hard as I do. Guys, Full Press Hockey here up on YouTube. Please follow along, subscribe to the channel. Jim Biringer with Anthony Donati, the Prospect Don. Guys, take care and enjoy the rest of the season. We'll be back again soon.